Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also keep in mind, these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are after market close on Monday, December 27th. We're going to take a look at SoFi. I do want to say before we get started that I appreciated everyone's comments on my post last week, just saying that I needed a few days off to rest and recover. I am feeling much better so far this week. I meant to get through a bunch of the requested videos over the weekend, but it sort of seemed like it was important to continue to rest and recoup as opposed to jump in and try to stress my voice by making a bunch of videos. So I plan to get through those as best as I can this week. So know that they haven't gone unnoticed, but I do appreciate all the well wishes as well. So thank you. Now, looking at the continued nice, strong price action on SoFi. So just to sort of like recap, trend down, consolidated out of the trend, has continued to show pretty solid strength, especially in the vast scheme of the overall market. We've been looking against Finex in recent days as well as ARKF, and seeing how SoFi has been sort of typically keeping pace or outpacing both of those. And you see again today, it outpaced both of them, outpaced ARKF quite a bit and outpaced Finex by about 1.5, I guess almost 2x what it was. And so just continuing to show really good relative strength against the overall markets, and then maybe even more importantly in the overall fintech space. I do think that probably the larger market, like the indices, may play a bigger factor if there's a drawdown, a large scale drawdown once again. But probably if things are relatively steady, nothing crazy happening, or even if it's a little choppy again, probably then Finex and ARKF and things more sort of central to the nucleus of SoFi's particular industry are probably going to be the best gauge against how it's moving, how it's acting relative to those stocks. So really good motion in my opinion, and we're seeing this starting to sort of like curl up, right? And it's nice, slow and steady movement. So we'll see. It's less herky-jerky than we saw here, right? Quick move up and then over 100% retracement on that move. And then similarly here, just a few days sideways movement and then the next leg down. And so this is a several day movement, first sideways and then starting to slowly but steadily curl up little by little. So to me, it looks like a really nice motion. Now, if we zoom in here on the daily, I wanted to talk about a few key sort of pieces that are coming into play for the price action. Obviously, we have this 1558. I don't know what the exact, maybe 1557 probably, I think is what we had on the chart. So that's the closest in resistance level that I have. And it's going to have to sort of wrestle with that a little bit probably, and if it's going to continue bullish, flip that from resistance to supports, and then that should unlock the opportunity for a run at 1656 as long as it can hold and sustain support over this 1557. Now, additionally to that, it just started over the last few days really directly interacting with this 12 EMA, and it's trying at the moment to flip that from resistance, from wrestling to grab that as support as well. And if that can do that and sort of allow the 12 EMA to help scoop it up. Now it has quite a bit ways to go before it interacts with that 34 and the 50, but the nice thing is those will probably be situated, if this does continue to move up, pretty close to that 1656 that we have on the chart. And though it can make that initial rejection quite strong, it can be nice to sort of like hit all of those at the same point, as opposed to like, okay, now you overcame 1656, and then at 1701 there's a 34 EMA, and then you get that, and then there's 1746 level, and then at 1779 there's the 50 EMA. So as opposed to sort of like breaking those up and just constantly having to fight your way through all these levels, it can be nice to sort of double dip on some of them where it's possible. The 180 MA is situated just above this 1746 level that we have as well. So that's, has potential. It depends how quickly we move. That's been moving like pretty sideways, right, for quite some time. I mean, it is an MA, so it's not as sensitive, and it's a 180. So it may, stay there. And if we sort of make progress toward that, that resistance level in a sort of reasonable period of time, then we might sort of have a similar situation there where it becomes a pretty sticky level, pretty challenging level to overcome, but that's partly because it's overcoming multiple resistance levels in one fell swoop. So that's what I'm looking at now. We haven't done this in a while, so we can do some additional check-ins now on Ichimoku Cloud. We are approaching here, this is over the course of the next couple of weeks, some pretty thin resistance that's coming up. So if we're able to make, now this would be incredibly strong moves, granted, but if we are able to make any really strong moves into the 19s within the next couple of weeks, and I know that's a lot to ask, there is, areas, as you see here, of relatively thin resistance. And if not, then, the further along that we let this go without sort of approaching or broaching these clouds, the thicker the resistance gets and further down the food chain, if you will. So something to sort of keep in mind there. And certainly this conversion line is sort of getting to be on an intersecting pace with the baseline, but they're still quite far apart and have a lot of real estate to close in order to get there. You can tell I'm still a little bit dingy with my words here, right? MACD, fresh bullish crossover. So we used to pay attention to this a lot. My feeling was that over time, more and more head fakes were occurring, and it became less and less of a solid indicator. And that's where I just sort of leaned more on the trend lines and the support and resistance levels that we were charting. But it is nice to see that, this is a lot of bearish momentum, right? Lengthy period of time, I would say. What about 6 weeks or 5 weeks, and has seemingly died down, and there's an opportunity now to flip it, and hopefully it will be a more robust flip than we saw here, for example. Now at this point, this was extended well above the baseline, right? This is way up 1.44, for instance, and now we're situated well below the baseline, so should have ample run room if it's able to make that switch and wants to flip and move. On the RSI side of things, nice steady movement, no major divergence, but what I would say here is I'd watch strongly for this mid range of the RSI, that 50 level, to see what it does when it gets there. To me, it's not really playing a huge factor to my mind until it gets to that level and sort of wants to prove what it's able to do at that point. This is some glitch with the Webull app. The RSI disappears intermittently. One of the joys. But that's where we are on the daily end of things. Now let's flip over to the intraday for anyone who's interested in that, sort of talk about how we might have dissected and played with this intraday. I guess before we unpack this, I would also mention that in the description below, there's a bunch of ways that we can keep in touch, a bunch of ways that we can interact, some offers that are there. If that might be interesting to you and you haven't checked the description ever or in a long time, feel free to drop that down and just have a look. So staying really, really nicely away from, just meaning it was really strong price action, away from the VWAP and this 180 MA. Now it got down here in kind of seemingly no man's land at the beginning of the day, but we've talked about this before, I think. Now what I like to do if I'm looking at anything intraday is pull out the and all of this grayed out area. This is all after hours and pre-market. What I like to do is pull out the low and the high from those, I guess at this point, because this was rising before market open. So, I would have put in something like this candle here if this was a minute after open. So maybe right here, I would have put in this 1518 level and then this 1485 as sort of the intraday levels of highs and lows, places where I'd like to see it bounce if it dips down to it, and places where I'd like to see it run through it to the upside if it's going to have nice bullish strength. And as you see, that's exactly where it bounced, right? This 1485 hit right here as well. The low on this candle, 1485, and then it was able to come up and make a run over this like 1518 level, right? And then it got pushed back a little bit, but then on the second go, it ran through it. And so those can be helpful on days when like the MA doesn't necessarily seem to be playing a big role, though it did a pretty good job like holding the zone most of the day. VWAP was pretty far away from the VWAP for sure. If I'm watching it super close, though, I mean, in retrospect, this can like look harder to decipher. In real time, this is a little bit more helpful in my opinion, though when it gets really barcodey like this, I find that those EMAs are sort of more challenging to read. So just wanted to mention this again. Pre-markets and after hours from the day before, highs and lows, I like to pull them out, stick them on the chart. I wasn't doing anything intraday with SoFi today, so I didn't put them on, but if I do, I usually put them on like an orangish type of color, just so that I can distinguish them from these blue ones, which I know come from the daily chart and may have more of sort of like a macro influence on the price action of the day, if that makes sense. But yeah, really nice movement today, and I'm excited to see sort of what the rest of the week brings. But I like this sort of like grind that it's in right now. It's sort of like we've seen it do this scooping action before, right? When it's had to come up and sort of like slowly but surely comes up. And these take several days or weeks to sort of develop a trend line, right? And so what I'll be looking for here next is, you know, maybe over the course of, by the end of next week or so, if we have started to develop any kind of an uptrend trend line that we can start to follow, and then we can look at any critical places where maybe putting in like an ascending wedge against these resistance levels to the upside, and we might be able to look for some strong movements one way or another as it intersects with those ascending triangles. All right, folks, so I hope that your week got off to a good start, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.